The signal came from nowhere, or rather, from a region that should not exist. In the vast archives of the Galactic Concord, that sector had been marked black for over 1,000,000 years. No travel lanes, no colonies, no records. It was a scar across the galactic map, an empty wound in the stars where even the oldest civilizations dared not look. Yet now a pulse. It came faint at first, riding on frequencies ancient and raw. The signal wasn't encoded in modern protocols. It was something older, something that predated the Concord itself. At first, the archivists thought it was a cosmic echo. Then the mathematicians noticed the pattern. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, a call, and at its core, buried beneath static and decay, was one unmistakable word: Earth. The council chambers erupted within hours. Species that hadn't shared a table in centuries now found themselves drawn together, unified by a single, horrifying curiosity. For so long, humanity had been myth, a ghost civilization said to have burned too bright and too fast. The last of their fleets vanished long before the Concord had even formed. Their weapons reshaped stars. Their wars scarred galaxies. And then they simply disappeared. No one had ever found the remains. No debris fields, no derelicts, no ruins, just silence. Until now, Admiral Varix of the Drathan Dominion leaned forward, his scaled hand tightening against the crystal display. The projection showed the signal repeating again and again, each pulse sharper than the last. "Triangulate it," he ordered. "Get me exact coordinates." The technicians worked in tense silence, translating the data, tracing the signal across warped subspace lines. When the map stabilized, a low murmur swept the room. The signal was coming from beyond the Perseus Rift. That region had been declared off-limits by every known power. Gravity storms, rogue black holes, spatial fractures. It was a death trap for even the most advanced ships. Nothing had ever come out of it alive. And yet something inside had just called their name. The Conquered President, a being of pure psionic light, spoke softly. "Do we know its nature?" Varix's voice was low. "Military. The frequency is ancient Terran Navy encryption, not mimicry, not AI, human." Silence gripped the room like a living thing. No one breathed. No one dared. Because if that was true, if a Terran fleet was still out there after 1,000,000 years, then the galaxy was about to remember what fear felt like. The fleet assembled in absolute silence. From the polished halls of the Concord's grand assembly to the black steel decks of warships older than most species civilizations, the same whisper spread: the Terrans have returned. No one wanted to believe it, but the data was undeniable. The signal wasn't an echo. It wasn't random radiation. It was a structured pulse, ancient military code repeating every 17 hours, drifting outward through subspace like a heartbeat. And every cycle, the signal grew stronger. Admiral Varix stood aboard the Celestial Fang, staring at the holographic display as dozens of species fleets prepared for the unthinkable contact. The Conquered had faced many threats over the millennia: rogue AIs, planet-eaters, empires consumed by madness, but none carried the weight of this one name: humanity, the species that burned through gods and gravity alike. The ones who waged war until physics itself begged for mercy, and then disappeared. Now the void whispered their name again. Varix's second-in-command, a crystalline entity named Cyrene, shimmered beside him. "Admiral, long-range probes have entered the rift perimeter. We're receiving preliminary visuals." Varix turned sharply. "Display them." The command deck darkened. Then the image appeared. A field of shattered suns, frozen in mid-collapse, their light warped into impossible colors. Around them drifted debris larger than continents, suspended as if time itself had paused mid-destruction. And in the center of it all, something moved. At first, it looked like a trick of gravity, a reflection caught between dimensions. But as the probes adjusted, as the sensors recalibrated, the truth unfolded: metal. Enormous ancient metal. Dozens, no, hundreds of ships, each larger than any vessel in current production. Their hulls were covered in markings worn by time but unmistakable. Terran Fleet Command. The bridge went silent. Syrene's light dimmed. Those ships should be dust, Admiral. Even quantum cores decay. Unless they weren't here, Varric said quietly. Syrene turned. You mean time displacement? Varric nodded slowly. What if they weren't lost but stopped? What if they've only been gone to us? Before anyone could answer, the signal changed. The old Terran pulse that had been looping for weeks suddenly shifted, its rhythm accelerating, its tone deepening. A translation appeared on the monitors. Human Expeditionary Command status, returning. All vessels prepare for reintegration. The bridge lights flickered. The comms filled with static, no, not static. Voices. Layers of them overlapping, distorted by distance and time, yet undeniably human. Status green, breach complete, all systems nominal. Then one voice rose above the rest. Calm, cold, commanding. This is Fleet Admiral Juno Reus of the Terran Defense Armada. To any recipients of this transmission, we are home. The signal cut. Every sensor in the quadrant flared with gravitational distortion. The stars around the rift bent, and from the darkness beyond time, something massive began to move. The rift tore open like the universe itself had drawn a breath. Every sensor in 100 light-years screamed. Spatial tension spiked. Gravity waves rippled across entire star systems, and the very fabric of subspace folded in on itself. The void wasn't empty anymore. It pulsed, like a living thing exhaling after 1,000,000 years of silence. On the bridge of the Celestial Fang, alarms blared as the ship's stabilizers buckled under the pressure. Syrene's crystalline form fractured light in sharp bursts, her voice fracturing through the static. Containment fields at 38%. The rift is expanding past prediction models. Varric gripped the edge of his console. Hold us steady. I want every active scanner focused on that breach. If those are Terrans, I want eyes on them now. Outside the viewport, reality bent, and through that swirling wound in spacetime, the first ship emerged. It was colossal, so large it made the Celestial Fang, a dreadnought feared across galaxies, look like a child's toy. The Terran warship's hull shimmered like forged obsidian, streaked with dull crimson veins of residual energy. Across its side, half buried under ice and time, glowed the faded but unmistakable emblem of an ancient Earth, the twin continents wrapped in the metallic ring of the Terran Defense Command. Then another ship emerged, and another, 10, 50, hundreds. Each vessel bore scars not of battle but of age. Yet their engines burned with steady light, defying the decay of eternity. Every hull radiated quantum signatures that shouldn't exist, technology that surpassed even the Conquered's greatest achievements. The bridge fell silent. Varric whispered, barely audible, "They survived." A communication pulse hit the fleet, a burst so powerful it shattered encryption layers like paper. Every ship, every satellite, every listening post across the sector received the same message simultaneously. Human Expeditionary Fleet, time compression cycle complete. Estimated displacement, 1.04 million years, confirming galactic integrity and threat assessment. Syrene's voice trembled for the first time in her luminous existence. 1,000,000 years, Admiral, their AI cores remember that entire span. They've seen everything we could never imagine. The main view screen shifted, feed hijacked, overridden by an old Terran command code not used since before most species evolved. A woman's face appeared. Pale skin, dark eyes that glowed faintly from bioluminescent implants. "Attention, unknown vessels," she said, her tone crisp, commanding, perfectly measured. "You are within the territorial boundary of the Terran defense perimeter. Identify yourselves or prepare to be fired upon." The bridge froze. Syrene tried to respond. "This is the Galactic Conquered, the woman interrupted, her gaze piercing. "Galactic Conquered." She looked off screen for a moment as though scanning through data older than the stars themselves. When her eyes returned to the feed, they were no longer cold, they were curious, almost mournful. Then we've been gone longer than expected. Varric stepped forward. This is Admiral Varric of the Concord's first response fleet. Humanity was believed extinct. You've been missing for over. The human cut him off gently. We know. We remember. The feed dimmed slightly, and for the briefest instant, static whispered behind her, screams, thunder, something metallic dragging across hulls. Then she spoke again, quieter now. Tell me, Admiral Varric, who rules the stars now? Varric hesitated. There is no ruler. The Concord governs the galaxy in peace. The woman smiled faintly. Peace, she said softly. We tried that once. Behind her, the blackness of space pulsed again, something vast still stirring beyond the rift. The human leaned closer to the camera. For your sake, I hope peace has made you strong. And with that, the connection cut. The next moment, the Terran fleet moved. Not toward the Concord, not toward any known coordinates, but deeper, back into the void they came from. And every jump they made sent gravitational ripples strong enough to shatter moons. Varric turned to Cyrene, his voice low. They're not here to fight, he said. They're checking. Checking what? Cyrene asked, her light dimming. Varric's eyes were cold as the rift behind them. If what they left behind is still dead. The galaxy held its breath. The reemergence of the Terran fleet was no longer a rumor whispered in dark corners. It was a fact. Every transmission, every sensor echo confirmed it. The impossible had returned. 1,000,000 years gone, and humanity had stepped back into the cosmos as if they'd never left. But it wasn't just their arrival that terrified the galaxy. It was how they moved. They didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They didn't acknowledge the fleets that shadowed them. They simply advanced through space, ship after ship, silent and synchronized, their trajectories unpredictable but deliberate. Every sector they passed through felt it. The fabric of subspace trembling, energy readings spiking beyond comprehension. Admiral Varric's fleet followed from a cautious distance, trying to make sense of their patterns. They're not moving like a military armada, Cyrene murmured, studying the holographic map. They're mapping something, triangulating. Varric narrowed his eyes. Mapping what? Her crystalline fingers danced across the console. Unknown. But every point they mark corresponds to historical extinction zones. Systems wiped out by cosmic phenomena long before the Concord existed. Varric leaned closer. Phenomena or weapons testing. Silence filled the bridge. Across the galaxy, the Council of Concord convened in panic. Representatives of 500 species filled the chamber, voices clashing in overlapping panic. The Dominion delegates demanded immediate strikes. The scholar races argued for contact. Others, ancient and patient, said nothing, watching the chaos unfold. At the center of it all, the chair of the Concord, a frail, winged being named Errol, spoke with a trembling voice. Humanity was lost before even our ancestors crawled from oceans. Their return means the cycle begins anew. We cannot assume they come in peace. A grizzled warlord from the Ixari tribe slammed a clawed fist on the table. Peace. You saw what their technology did to the void. Those ships defy physics. If we wait, we die. But before Errol could respond, a holographic transmission interrupted the debate. It was Varric. Counselors, he said grimly, you won't need to go to them. They're coming to us. Every being in the chamber fell silent as the hologram behind Varric flickered to life. An image of a Terran dreadnought, larger than any structure the galaxy had ever built, gliding past the orbit of a conquered core world. Its surface glowed faintly, not with weapon heat signatures but symbols. Ancient, rotating script that no translator could decode. The council broke into uproar, voices echoing through the chamber. What does it mean? Are they preparing an attack? Can they be reasoned with? Varric looked directly into the feed. It means they're marking territory. The words sent a shiver through every delegate. Hours later, as the Concord scrambled fleets, research divisions worked in desperation, analyzing every scrap of Terran data they could find. And buried deep in an abandoned data vault beneath the Concord archives, an ancient file was found. A single Terran distress signal, timestamped 1 million years ago. Expeditionary command to Earth Command. Mission complete. Encountered something in the darkness. Not hostile, not alive. Recording anomaly. Recommend total quarantine of Sector 019. Do not pursue. Do not follow. For God's sake, don't try to understand it. Cyrene replayed the message over and over in disbelief. They knew something was out there, she whispered. Something that made them disappear. Varric stood silently, watching the Terran fleet continue its slow, unstoppable movement across the starfield. Disappear, he said at last, his voice hollow. No, they didn't disappear, Cyrene. They built something. Something meant to outlast even themselves. And as the rift behind them pulsed again, its edges glowing like the heartbeat of a sleeping god, the truth began to take shape in his mind. Humanity hadn't been lost in time. They had been waiting. When the Terran fleet finally stopped, it was as if the galaxy itself paused with them. Every sensor in range froze, energy readings flatlined, time distortion stabilized, even gravity seemed to hesitate. For one brief, impossible moment, everything was still. Then the transmissions began. They weren't messages in any known language. Not light, not sound, not code. They were frequencies of intent, data translated through raw emotion, carried on subspace currents. Those who listened too long reported hearing voices, not in their ears but in their thoughts. The conquered called it psychological contamination. The few who survived it called it contact. Admiral Varric and Cyrene stood aboard the observation deck of their flagship, watching the Terran armada through reinforced glass. "Do you feel it?" Cyrene whispered. Varric didn't answer immediately. He felt it, the strange hum beneath his skin, the quiet pulse of something vast and deliberate. Not hostility, not peace, something else entirely. "It's like they're remembering us," he finally said. Cyrene turned. Remembering. Varric's gaze stayed fixed on the nearest Terran ship, a massive vessel shaped like a blade, its surface engraved with faint geometric scars that seemed to move when you weren't looking. "They aren't seeing us for the first time," he said quietly. "They're recognizing us, as if they've been here before." A sudden tremor shook the ship and the comms officer's voice broke through. "Admiral, one of the Terran ships is powering up." Energy surge massive, off the charts. Across the void, one of the colossal dreadnoughts unfurled its structure like a flower made of light. Panels opened, revealing a core brighter than a star. Every scanner in the fleet shorted out at once. "Defensive posture," Varric shouted. "Shields to maximum." But the surge wasn't a weapon. The energy rippled outward in waves, graceful, controlled, measured. And as it passed through the Dominion fleet, strange things began to happen. Old communications came alive. Forgotten frequencies reawakened. Cyrene gasped as holographic static filled the bridge, forming fragmented images, faces, uniforms, emblems. Human. "Admiral, this is impossible," she whispered. "That's a Terran transmission signature. Ancient. It's..." Her words died as the hologram stabilized. A man's voice, calm and weary, spoke through the interference. "This is Captain Elia's work of the Terran Vanguard. If you're receiving this, it means the quarantine protocol has failed. We did not win. We did not lose. We became what we feared." The bridge was silent except for the low hum of the Terran fleet beyond. Rourke's image flickered again, his expression unreadable. "Do not follow our path. Do not try to reach the dark. It remembers what created it." The message cut out, replaced by static. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, Cyrene turned toward Varric, her voice trembling. "They left that message for us." Varric shook his head slowly. "Not for us, for anyone who came after. They weren't warning the galaxy, they were warning themselves." Then, through the viewport, the Terran fleet began to move again, slowly, methodically. But this time their formation shifted. It wasn't random. Every ship aligned with another, their glowing symbols merging into a pattern that stretched across light years, forming a colossal ring of light. A pulse rippled outward, an ancient command, awakening something older than the Council, older than the conquered, older even than the stars themselves. Cyrene felt it before the instruments detected it. The gravity fluctuations, the static in her teeth, the cold pressure in her chest. "Admiral," she whispered. "What are they doing?" Varix didn't answer. His voice had gone dry. "They're opening something." And deep in the dark, where the edge of the universe curved back on itself, something answered the call. A second light flared in the void, colder, sharper, hungrier. The Terrans had not just returned. They had brought back what they found. The universe screamed. Sensors all across the quadrant went blind as the rift widened, an ancient wound torn open by the pulse of Terran design. The stars themselves bent around it, their light swallowed into the black geometry of the gate. It wasn't a portal in the conventional sense. It was an absence, a perfect, impossible shape, eating the very fabric of reality. Every being who looked directly into it reported the same thing, a feeling of recognition. Not fear, not wonder, recognition. As though the darkness inside the gate was something they had always known, something buried deep in the collective DNA of all living things. On the Dominion flagship, panic bled through the bridge like smoke. Voices shouted over one another, screens flickered, navigation systems failed. Admiral Varix stood unmoving. His gaze was locked on the Terran armada, still holding formation around the rift as if guarding it. Their ships pulsed in rhythm with the gate's heartbeat, feeding it power drawn from stars themselves. Cyrene's voice broke through the chaos, trembling. "Admiral, readings are climbing again. The gravitational field, it's rewriting the constants of local space." "Pull us back," Varix ordered quietly. Now, the engines roared, but space refused to cooperate. The ship's drive screamed in protest as they tried to move, yet every motion felt slower, dragged down by the sheer weight of what was unfolding before them. Cyrene clutched the console. "Admiral, it's like time itself is resisting." Varix turned, his voice cold. "Then we stay and witness it. Whatever this is, the galaxy will need to understand." Out in the void, one Terran ship broke formation and drifted toward the rift. It was massive, angular, and old, so old that its hull carried fractures filled with glowing amber veins, as if the ship itself bled starlight. A broadcast erupted across all known channels. Not a message, but a presence. Every mind tuned to it involuntarily, every heartbeat synchronized. The voice that followed was human, but ancient, distorted by centuries of compression and degradation. "We left to contain it. We failed. Now we return to end it." The voice faded, but the meaning lingered, simple, final, terrifying. And then the first wave hit. Energy rolled through the void, invisible yet devastating. Fleets light years away reported catastrophic systems failure. Entire planets lost power. On the Dominion flagship, the crew fell silent as the Terran fleet began to transform. Their ships unfolded, panels shifting, cores exposed, light bleeding through fractures like molten glass. And then they merged. Thousands of individual warships, moving as one organism, converged around the rift, forming a single colossal structure that dwarfed anything known. It was not a machine, it was not alive, it was something in between. Cyrene's voice cracked. "Admiral, they're building a containment field, using themselves." Varix's throat went dry. "They're sacrificing their entire fleet." But as the Terran vessels fused, something else began to emerge from within the rift. A shape vast and shifting, with outlines that refused to stay fixed. It was both shadow and light, structure and chaos, a presence that filled every atom of space. Cyrene fell to her knees, clutching her head. "I can hear it," she whispered, voice breaking. "It's speaking, Admiral, it's speaking to them." Varix steadied her. "What is it saying?" Her eyes widened in horror. "It's saying, welcome back." Across the void, the hybrid Terran construct pulsed once, bright enough to outshine entire constellations. And then a voice, stronger, human, unified, answered back through every frequency in existence. "We never left." The light consumed everything. When it faded, the gate was gone. The Terran structure was gone. The stars returned to their places. But the galaxy had changed. Every sensor, every beacon, every AI across millions of systems recorded one impossible fact. For exactly 3 seconds, every star in the Milky Way had pulsed in unison. And in those 3 seconds, they all heard it. A heartbeat. Human, the silence that followed was not peace. It was aftermath. Across the galaxy, systems flickered back to life. Emergency lights blinked on in the ruins of orbital stations. Damaged fleets drifted like debris among the stars. Communications slowly reconnected, and every species, every empire, every intelligence asked the same question. What just happened? But no one could answer. In the Dominion command sector, Admiral Varric stood at the viewport of his ship, staring at the place where the rift had been. The space there still shimmered faintly, like a mirage that refused to fade. He hadn't moved for hours. Behind him, Cyrene worked silently. Her hands trembled as she scanned through the data streams, the logs, the recorded telemetry. But it was useless. The sensors had gone blind the moment the human fleet merged with the anomaly. What little information survived was corrupted, repeating a single binary pattern. 10-11-10-11-10-1 again and again. Can you decode it? Varric asked finally, his voice low. Cyrene nodded weakly. I already did. It translates to a single Terran word. He turned, eyes narrowing. What word? She looked up from her console, her expression unreadable. Home. The word lingered between them like static. Before Varric could respond, the ship's sensors pinged. One quiet, almost apologetic chirp. A faint energy surge registered from the edge of the sector. Not an explosion, not a weapon, just a flicker. Varric ordered magnification. The display zoomed in, revealing a ship. No, not a ship. A fragment. A sliver of the Terran fleet. One of the vessels that had fused into the construct. Its hull was scorched black, its structure cracked, yet its engines glowed faintly. It was moving slow but steady. Contact it, Varric commanded. Cyrene hesitated. Admiral, if it's active, do it. She sent the hail, for a moment nothing. Then the screen flickered. Static burst across the channel and a voice emerged. A man's voice, human, weary yet defiant. This is Captain Reese Carter of the UNS Acheron. If anyone can hear me, tell the galaxy we sealed it. But the cost, his words broke into distortion. The darkness isn't gone, it's moving. It's following us. The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by silence. Varric felt something cold twist in his chest. Following them? Cyrene shook her head, voice trembling. No, sir. I think he meant following us. Before either could react, the lights dimmed. The ship's power flickered, and for a moment the stars outside seemed to shift. The familiar constellations warped slightly, like space was breathing. And then, every console on the bridge lit up in perfect sync, displaying the same signal. That binary code again. But this time, it was longer. 10-11-10-11-10-10, 10-11-10-11-111-10. Cyrene translated it aloud, her voice shaking. It says homecoming protocol initiated. Varric turned slowly toward her. Homecoming? What does that mean? Before she could answer, a new reading appeared. A massive energy buildup, origin unknown, spreading through subspace faster than light. It wasn't an attack. It was a signal, and its source was Earth. It began as a whisper in the dark. Across the void, sensors long dormant flickered alive. Old satellites, relics of forgotten wars, turned their burnt faces toward a signal pulsing through the black. It was faint at first, more memory than transmission. But then it grew, cascading through subspace like a tidal wave of light. Every receiver in the quadrant caught fragments of it, a tone that wasn't just data, but something deeper. A resonance, a heartbeat. Earth was calling. In the Dominion's high command, alarms blared. On distant worlds, empires mobilized. The Galactic Council, those few who had survived the Terran anomaly, met in hushed panic. They'd thought it was over, that the humans had vanished back into myth, into the long dark where they had slept for 1,000,000 years. They were wrong. Admiral Varric watched the holomap as the energy readings grew. Cyrene stood beside him, her expression pale, transfixed. The pattern wasn't random, it was forming something. A wave front spreading outward from Sol at exponential velocity. "What is it?" he whispered. Cyrene's voice was distant. "It's a wake-up call." The screen shifted, the readings resolving into coherent data. Thousands, no, millions of objects were appearing in the system. Massive structures emerging from within Earth's orbit, the Moon, the ruins of Mars. They weren't ships, not yet. They were shells, half-built, sleeping giants coming alive under the pulse of that signal. Each one powered by something no one in the modern galaxy could replicate. Human industry resurrecting itself. The Terrans hadn't died. They had gone to ground, they had waited, and now they were rebuilding. A transmission reached every known channel. No encryption, no threat. Just a calm human voice, genderless, emotionless, ageless. "This is Earth Command." The voice carried across all frequencies, reaching every world, every fleet, every terrified listener. Our silence was not surrender. Our disappearance was not defeat. "You thought us gone, forgotten in the dark." A pause. The signal pulsed once more, stronger this time. "You were wrong." Images followed, data burst too fast for most species to parse. But for those who could decode it, they saw flashes of things impossible to believe. Planetary engines igniting, Dyson constructs forming in orbit, black hole reactors blooming like artificial suns. Varric stared in awe. "They're not just returning," he said softly, "they're ascending." Cyrene turned to him, her eyes wide with something between fear and reverence. "No, Admiral, they're catching up." The broadcast continued. "To those who betrayed us, to those who feared us, to those who watched as our world burned, we remember. The stars are vast, but memory is vaster still. Prepare your worlds. We are coming home." The transmission ended. Silence once again filled the command deck. But the stars outside were no longer calm. The constellations shimmered as new light bloomed within the Sol system, human light. Then faintly through the static of a dying frequency, a voice echoed, old human defiant. "Humanity doesn't vanish. We endure, we adapt. And when we return, a flicker, a burst of light, the signal collapsing into silence. We bring the dawn." Across the galaxy the night began to break. End Milky Way.